Sales is not a dirty word in business. And yet we have constantly been inundated with this idea that if you're salesy, you're a bad person, or you run a bad business, or you're just greedy. And it's nonsensical. It's such a lie. It is one of the biggest fallacies in all of business. And it's also one of the number one bottlenecks for most companies between six figures to seven figures. And in fact, it's one of the biggest bottlenecks for most companies all the time anyway. It's one of the hardest things to understand without actually knowing that sales is the greatest thing that you get to do. I love sales. In fact, it's the only reason that I got out of being a homeless teenager and a child of the streets as someone who could not figure out anything on their own in their 20s, who my first five businesses crashed and burned. And it wasn't until I understood the power of sales that I start to make six figures and then eventually multiple seven figure companies. Sales, believe it or not, and this is one of the places where people get so stuck, especially as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as business owners, is sales are not for us. I'm going to say it again. Sales are not for us. They are for our customer because we are solving a problem for them. And that is the greatest thing that we get to do. But people look at sales as it's like this horrible taboo, that it's the worst thing ever. How dare you be salesy? Everything is sales. Everything all the time is sales. You show me something that happens in the world, I will show you sales. But here's the reality. If your revenue is completely dependent on you and you don't have a system and a structure, you're doomed. And that's why most people hate sales. Well, it's two reasons. One, they've had a really horrible experience being sold to. This is why I feel bad for used car salesmen. Like everyone gives those guys such a bad rep. I feel bad for insurance salesmen, which I was one for 5 years. Those guys get such a bad rep that everybody who's in sales, we go, oh man, they're horrible people. Think about this for a second. You go to a nice steakhouse, let's say it's somebody's birthday. And the waitress goes, okay, well, tonight, or waiter, tonight we have the market priced T-bone. And, market price, you're $4,000 a pound or whatever. And then you go, actually, I think that I'll do the 30-day aged ribeye and it's $76. And she goes, cool. Well, great. We'll get that ready for you. How do you want it cooked? You tell them whatever you tell them. And then she's like, oh, do you want the butter? You're like, the butter? Yeah, yeah, it's $4 for the butter. And they bring you a tablespoon of butter that has some melted garlic and parsley on it. And it's $4. You get a whole stick of butter for $4. But you go, I'll take the butter. And she goes, okay, well, do you want the fries? I don't want the fries tonight. I'll do the asparagus. The asparagus is $19. You can buy a bunch of asparagus for $19, right? But then you get to dessert. It's a chocolate cake. It's a flourless chocolate cake with a fudge topping on top of it. And that's $37. And she's like, do you want the cake? And you're like, well, yeah, we're at the steakhouse for a celebration. This whole time you went through this process of sales. They were simply helping you solve your problem. I need to have an amazing birthday dinner at this steakhouse. So that's where I'm going. We got sold the entire time. You probably also bought the sparkling water that was $48, right? Now I'm just making up numbers for conversation's sake, but you get my point. Sales are the engine to everything. Now, here's the reality. Marketing, which we'll talk about later, marketing is the gas, but sales are the engine. And without the sales, you have nothing because here's the reality. Sales, once you can build a reliable engine, it's like getting in a car that you know is going to start. But most people don't understand that it is the sales process that is broken in the business, which is causing three major headaches. And you can kind of see this immediately. Uneven revenue. You never know where it's coming from. It's up and down every single month. The lead flow process is broken. The closing process is broken. You don't have sales scripts. You don't have call recordings. You're not getting on enough calls. Everything from the hello to the close is off. You have the wrong target market fit. I mean, there's a million things that go wrong before someone purchases from you. And so that's what I always see. I see people go, we can get sales sometimes. Well, how do we get sales every single day? How do we get sales multiple times every single day? What does that process look like? Then this one especially will bottleneck you if you want to get to seven figures. It is the founder, the owner, or the leader closing all the calls. That makes you a salesperson. It does not make you a leader. And so you might actually be the bottleneck here, or one of your team members who's better suited somewhere else because they can't close a sale to save their life. They, as my grandma would say, they couldn't sell ice water in hell. And that's a problem. Yes, my grandma said that. It's a completely true sentence. And so, what I want you to think about, maybe it is either you as the bottleneck or someone on your team. And then the crippler of all of them, and I see this way too often, where's the follow up process? You have no follow-up process. The funny thing that I see a lot of times, and I do have a background in restaurants, that's why it came to mind. When I was young and I was serving, people would be like, no, we don't want the chocolate cake right now. And I would give them time and I would circle back, especially if I dropped the check and they weren't buying or they weren't paying right then. I would come back when they put their credit card in. Let's say it's 15 minutes later. I go, guys, I'm going to tell you something. I had the chocolate cake today. It's better than it's ever been. And that was true. Like a lot of times that was true because I worked at a really nice restaurant amongst really, really bad restaurants as well. And so the thing is, I always followed up. I did the same thing when I moved to insurance sales. When I came into insurance, I was 20 years old. I had no sales background. I had no corporate experience. And I was dead broke at this time. But I was hungry and I was ambitious. And I was around people who had a system and a process and order that allowed me to become a top 10 producer in one of the biggest insurance companies in America, a Fortune 10 company at 21 years old, because I had a system and a process. Most people, and by the time I left that company, I think I generated something like $25 million in revenue. Me, singularly. Like I was a top 10 performer time and time and time again. We made a lot of money there. But one of the things that happened is like I had a system for follow up. I learned this from a mentor a long time ago. And this is subjective. No doesn't always mean no. No sometimes means it's not the right time. No means not yet. No means the dishwasher's overflowing. No means I got a car payment that I'm in over my head on. No means the business isn't doing well. No means a lot of different things why people tell you no. But we should be chasing the no's. The no's are really your best friend because the thing that separates the chunks of no's are the yeses. I'm going to say this again. The things that separate all of the no's when you are selling in business are the yeses. And so you get this series of no's, you hit a yes. That was the thing you were looking for the whole time. And so it's like, great, we got the yes. That's amazing. Let's keep chasing the no's. How many times do I have to get rejected to get what I want? If I told you, I want you to think about this. If I told you you could build a 7-figure company, but you had to get rejected 10,000 times, would you do it? Because if you would, that's what really the backside on the follow-up is. It's just getting on the phone again and again and again. Call your leads. That's another conversation, but that's a part of the sales process. Now, here's what happens if you don't solve your sales process. If you don't understand two pivotal things about sales. One, we are helping people when we sell to them. If you don't believe that, you should not be in business. You should not be an entrepreneur. You should not be a leader or an executive. You just shouldn't because you're in the wrong position. Because if you're one of the people who think sales are slimy and nasty and gross, that tells me two things about you. One, you probably sell in a slimy, nasty, and gross way. Or two, it's happened to you so many times that you can't let go of it. And the other thing is when we're not focused on the helping, the actual customer, the thing that I look at, I'm helping my team who has husbands and wives and children and want to take that trip and the hospital bill due and the little kids' soccer tournament fees and the anniversary present and the engagement ring and that once in a lifetime trip that you've been dying to take together. When we do sales, we get to help our team have those moments too. Sales is all about helping people. And so whatever that misnomer is you have that sales is bad, I'm going to implore you to get that out of your mind. But the reality is, on top of that, you have to have a system and a process to do sales. You must. Sales are not by accident. There is a formulaic approach to all of this, not only just in human psychology, but in the way that you close. That's something that I teach people because now to date, I'm very close to crossing $100 million in sales since I was 20 years old. Very, very close. So I've learned a few things, but I'll give you one tip here because I think it's actually really important. I'm not pushy ever. If you don't want it, okay, see ya. Have a great day. I'll follow up with you. We'll have a chat. Maybe we'll grab coffee sometime. You might not ever buy anything from me ever. I don't care. And it doesn't impact me in the least bit. So if you feel like sales are slimy, just remove yourself from the equation of feeling like it has to be that way. I've never been pushy. I was a I'll tell you another quick story. When I was a top 10 performer at this insurance company, I remember one time we got called into a meeting, and our VP of sales at the time, the guy who looked over the whole vertical of the business, he was telling us how we needed to be more aggressive. And I thought to myself, that's so backwards. People don't like to be sold. People do not like to be convinced. I don't. I'm a contrarian by nature. I don't like when people tell me what to do. I like to make my own decisions. Every dollar I've ever made in sales, every dollar has always been do what's right for you and your family. You make decisions. I'm here for you if you need it. And if you don't, great. And there are people out there who will tell you to be pushy and salesy. I'm not that guy. I don't like it. I'm not going to tell you that. But we do have to understand that something really true starts to happen in our business if we do not create a sales process and funnel from our marketing to our lead acquisition to our customer acquisition to lowering our churn to building MRR, all of those things. It begins with a system and a process. And if you don't figure this out and create your sales process, I can tell you for certain three things are going to happen. One, you are going to completely annihilate your cash flow, creating massive stress. Two, because there's massive cash stress, there's going to be emotional volatility with you, partners, teams, family, friends. It just happens. And three, all of your planning and forecasting is going to be for nothing. Because without sales, you cannot run your business. And if you leave this unaddressed, ultimately, the reality is you lose your business. You lose your position, you lose your role. Here's what happens. Business either does one of two things. It either grows or it dies. There is no this flat line in business. People go, oh, we're doing so good. We had the same month as last month. I'm like, that is a problem. If you go in the hospital and you flatline, you're dead. So sales is either up or it's down. The business is up or down. It is not flatline. It cannot be that because you will not survive, right? So the question you need to be asking yourself here is in my process and in my business and in the things that I'm working on right now, what do I need to do to get a sales process in the way to have a successful business, to go to 6 figures or 7 figures or 8 figures? And it's the same thing I've done with every one of my companies. And these are the things you can do in the next 30 days that will absolutely change the business for you. One is you have to define the current sales pipeline clearly. If you do not know where your leads are coming from, and that is where the leakage is, figure that out. If you're getting on sales call and your team is getting on sales call and you're not closing, there's a leakage there that could be anything from offer to delivery to asking for the sale. There was a research article done or a research study done, I think like 15 years ago. This researcher went into this major corporation. They were trying to find out why they weren't converting sales at the level that they could because they had some really, really high performers and some really, really low performers. But there was no in between. It was very strange. And this company was trying to figure it out. So they brought in this research company to help them figure it out. They sat with the entire company for a month. And at the end, they figured out one simple thing. This is crazy. This blew my mind when I heard this. And I heard this probably like 10 years ago. The top performers were asking for the sell. The bottom performers were not. That was the only difference. So somewhere in your pipeline, we've got to identify what's broken and go in and fix it. Next, we have to also identify where the deals are leaking because it may not be the pipeline. It may actually be on the back side. Your churn might be so high because fulfillment is broken, because customer service is broken, because maybe all kinds of a litany of different things could be occurring that you're not aware of. And so this is where part 3 of this comes in. You also have to identify where you can improve and follow up, because the follow up isn't only with the customer, the follow up's also with the team. How are we integrating into the business on a daily basis to make sure that we're doing things the right way? You know, it's wild to me how many teams do not role play sales calls. If you and your team are not role playing sales calls, you're missing a huge opportunity. If you're not role playing that cold call, you're missing huge opportunity. You know, we have to get into this place where we're studying how to effectively accomplish the goal. It could be anything from a simple question to the execution. And you've got to get in this and figure it out. So there is a guide that you can use. If you go to unbrokenbsg.com, like unbrokenbusinesssupportgroup.com, unbrokenbsg.com, you can get a guide, which you probably see here, or you can hop on a call with the team and we can help you understand the best place to optimize the business and what's in front of you. Because ultimately, sales are the backbone. It is the very thing that's going to help you grow the business. And we want to help you do that because we know that the people who are coming here are all about helping. So that said, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to learning more about you, connecting with you, jamming with you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Until next time, till I see you, be unbroken.